All of the wrestlers that you're about to see on this list eventually morphed into things that had turned their stomachs, make them retch, and make them tut if it was happening to somebody else on the roster. This is not a glimpse into pro wrestling careers that were totally wrecked by poor decision making, but more a warning shot across the bows on what can go wrong if someone turns into something that they once stood against. So with that in mind, I am Gareth, this is What Culture Wrestling, and here are 10 wrestlers who became everything they hated. Number 10, Dean Ambrose becomes miserable. Jon Moxley didn't cut his teeth in the wrestling business to hate what he was doing on TV every week, or question how long the creative torture would last. He isn't the first to find out firsthand that Vince McMahon's creative genius wasn't exactly exhaustive, but Mox is one of the highest profile examples from the final stretch of McMahon's WWE run. The then Dean Ambrose suffered through a thoroughly miserable time right before leaving the company for the brave new world over in AEW, since he's openly discussed how depressed he was when appearing in that inoculation skit, or when turning into a cartoonish Batman-style villain that was neither fleshed out nor particularly well thought out. It was not very good. His violent style isn't for everybody, but Mox is the kind of wrestler who wants to have fun on his terms and express himself. WWE's rigid corporate ladder in 2018 to 2019 didn't allow for that, and so Dino darted off to see what was happening elsewhere on the wrestling map. Becoming miserable at wrestling shows was never Moxley's wish, but that misery smacked him in the chest harder than a Gunter chop. Yeah, that's hard. And you know what? I've got a quick question for you. What do you think is the best ever WWE to AEW jump? Was it Moxley all those years ago, or somebody else? You let me know in the comment section down below. Number 9, LA Knight becomes background noise. McMahon didn't see much in LA Knight as an in-ring performer either. In fact, the old WWE boss planned to pluck one of NXT's brightest stars from the developmental brand and recast him as Max Dupree, manager extraordinaire. Nobody was thinking of greats like Bobby Heenan or Paul Heyman whenever Dupree warbled through some dialogue though, let's be honest. Knight also didn't exactly dig being a heel mouthpiece for some going nowhere tag team. Now that's not meant as a dismissal of maximum male models, but come on, WWE's bigwigs never really treated the unit with any respect creatively, did they? And that was never gonna change. McMahon stepping away and Triple H seizing control was the best thing that could have happened to LA. The upheaval meant that Knight was restored to his former glory and Trips just let him do his own thing. And he has been thriving ever since dropping the lame Dupree character he couldn't get a feel for and becoming an active wrestler again. Today, LA is one of the company's brightest babyfaces, and his star continues to rise heading into 2025. Yeah. Number 8, The Godfather becomes part of Right to Censor. During an appearance on Steve Austin's Broken Skull Sessions in 2021, The Godfather claimed that he loved everyone in the Right to Censor faction, but it turns out that isn't strictly true. In years since, the artist formerly known as Papa Shango has admitted that he didn't have a lot of time for Stevie Richards behind the curtain. He also thought Right to Censor sucked as an idea. Ouch. Imagine the man's horror then when WWF chiefs told him he'd be adding an extra O to his name and becoming the Godfather. He must have thought someone backstage was trying to pop the locker room by ribbing one of the stalwarts. But no, the writing team really wanted to put Godfather in a stable he viewed as completely crap. Yeah, must have been some barrel of laughs whenever Censor got together for promo shots or, well, anything at all. The soon-to-be Godfather went from fun-loving pimp gimmick to white shirt and black tie-wearing goon for Right to Censor. You can see for yourselves just how much of a good time the dude was having in this shot right here. It looks like he'd rather be anywhere else, bless him. Number 7, Shane Douglas becomes second-rate. Being anywhere else sounded pretty darn good to Shane Douglas by early 1996. The guy had been a real revolutionary after tossing down the NWA belt and ushering in the era of peak ECW in the summer of '94. Approximately 18 months later, though, Shane had been rethought as walking cartoon Dean Douglas in the WWF, and he was having the worst time both in front of cameras and backstage in locker rooms. Being brutally honest, the gimmick was a poor fit for him from the off, but he had bigger problems. Shane wasn't making any money, and he didn't get along with some on the roster either, the Clique mainly. In a heartbeat, Douglas went from industry lightning rod to working a crappy gimmick for payoffs poorer than some on the indie circuit, and he just could not take it anymore. Everything came to a head when allegations surfaced that Dean was was faking injuries to get out of wrestling. He's vehemently denied that over the years, and just thinks the whole WWF run was a botched experiment. Becoming a second-rate mid-carder who was disliked backstage just did not sound fun to Douglas after gripping industry critics by the balls with the NWA ECW stuff. Number 6, Terry Taylor becomes a walking cartoon. Terry Taylor skirts between being kind and cringing at his old Red Rooster gimmick whenever he's asked. It seems to depend which day of the week it is, and how charitable Terry is feeling when looking back on the golden age of WWF and sports entertainment revolution in the late 1980s and early 90s. One thing is true though, Rooster was so far out of Taylor's comfort zone it wasn't even funny. He'd been a boots and tights, slick wrestler in the mold of Ric Flair before Vince McMahon picked him up and slapped the Rooster gimmick on him. The babyface version he played after splitting from Bobby Heenan in particular was appalling, and went against everything that Taylor stood for inside a wrestling ring. So what, get on with it, right? Well, that's one way to look at things, but Taylor toiled. He never looked comfy with the dyed red spikes or when crowing during his promos. It was too outlandish. That is saying something for the WWF during that era. And almost tragically, Terry still wore the Flair-style robes he'd adorned in the NWA and Mid-South. You know, when he was a celebrated technician, not wrestling's answer to Foghorn Leghorn. Thanks for stopping by to check out this list today, my friend. If you're enjoying yourself, then hit that subscribe button down below and you will enjoy yourself with more What Culture Wrestling videos in your day. Just do it, you know, thank me later. Number 5, Steve Austin becomes a parody of himself. If anyone grabs a minute with Stone Cold, just ask him to name some of his biggest regrets. And he'll surely talk about not calling an ad-lib at WrestleMania X7 by kick, wham, and stunnering Vince McMahon to remain babyface. That's the night that Steve Austin went heel, of course, and he really wishes he had not bothered. He's not the only one. Now sure, it led to some hilarious stuff with cowboy hats, badges, guitars, etc. with Kurt Angle and McMahon, but at what cost? Austin completely lost his edge for a long time, and he became a parody of himself by splicing in comedic cowardice with an off-the-wall approach. It's clear looking back that the promotion wanted to depict Austin as somebody who had lost his damn mind, but they told that story too clumsily for it to be effective in the heat of the moment. Remember, just one tiny tweak can lead to disastrous results for even WWE's best. It really doesn't take much for things to go south, folks. Today, Austin wishes he'd just torn up the script, remained anti-hero face, and then continued giving fans what they wanted to see from him for the rest of 01. If only, eh? Number 4, Shawn Michaels becomes he who can't deliver. Pretty much every Shawn Michaels interview between 2010 to 2018 asked the same damn question. Will you ever wrestle again, Shawn? Journalists wanted some juice from HBK. They wanted to be the first to know if he was lacing up the boots one more time for a surefire hit versus Bryan Danielson or AJ Styles. But Shawn palmed off such queries and repeatedly said he was finished as an active pro wrestler. Money talks though, my friends. Look, here's the truth. Nobody would have complained about Michaels bagging a generous payday to wrestle in Saudi Arabia had the tag match at Crown Jewel 2018 been any good. Well, probably. It wasn't good though, was it? Shawn teamed with Triple H versus Kane and The Undertaker in a terrible bout that everyone involved would end up despising, and fans praying for more HBK were left with a bad taste in their mouths. Who knew that Michaels would become someone who'd happily take a sizable payoff without delivering in ring? That seemed like an impossibility ahead of the Crown Jewel disaster. Sadly, it's just one of many WWE in Saudi moments that have had folks shaking their heads in disbelief. Now, admittedly, those international jaunts can throw up some gems. DX versus Brothers of Destruction sure was not one of them though. Number 3, Undertaker becomes embarrassed to perform. The Last Ride series that hit WWE Network in 2020 was gripping and mortifying all at once. The docuseries wasn't some all-encompassing, glittery celebration of The Undertaker's life and career. No, it was a deep dive into the personal hell one of wrestling's best ever characters experienced when grappling with his own mortality. It was a fun watch. Watching Taker relive matches versus Roman Reigns and Goldberg during select episodes was downright painful. It was an endurance test for any fan, and yet even the most hardcore deadman marks could not look away as their hero admitted he was embarrassed, humbled, and concerned that he'd just tarnished his rich legacy with some serious stinkers. Here was someone who'd almost literally lived a gimmick for decades whenever he was in the public eye. Suddenly, WWE peeled back each layer of Undertaker's skin to reveal a broken Mark Calloway underneath. Physically, he was knackered. Mentally, he was ashamed of his performances between the ropes. Calloway has also admitted that he never planned to become somebody who overstayed his welcome. But a mixture of ego, addiction to performing, and desperation from Vince McMahon to squeeze more from his iconic persona almost cost the man his health. It was a scary last few rides there for Mean Mark. Number 2, Chris Jericho becomes what he hated in WCW. Here's a pertinent question for today's product. Where did it all go wrong for Chris Jericho in AEW? He's gone from somebody who stuck a middle finger up at McMahon-led dull-as-dishwater WWE fare and led the way for All Elite to one of wrestling's most unwanted and outdated acts. It's a remarkable slide for someone who previously had his finger on the pulse of what fans wish to see. Jericho claims his current gimmick is deliberately annoying, but he has X-Pac heat that'd make Shawn Waltman from 2001 blush. The reigning ROH champ has become one of those older guys he would have bitched about in WCW towards the end of the 90s. He's taking TV time away from younger talent and winning titles he doesn't need to win, whilst fans look beyond him and enjoy other workers more. Simple as that, really. Jericho from 1999 would have rolled his eyes when looking at show format sheets to see workers exactly like him now get bags of TV time on Nitro. Does Hulk Hogan really need 3 promo segments on the same broadcast? Does Kevin Nash really need another belt? What about everyone else? This just is not working for AEW. It's driving away viewers, not attracting them. Something needs to change. Number 1, John Cena becomes what he stood against. Well, this is pretty awkward. Cast your minds back to episodes of Raw from 2011 and 2012 when John Cena mocked The Rock for leaving WWE and chasing the Hollywood dream. Super Cena claimed to be super against ditching full-time wrestling for film and TV, but then he went and followed in Rocky's footsteps. Imagine that. Now listen, JC is fully entitled to do whatever he wants to do. Nobody's denying that, but his anti-Hollywood speeches have not aged well. Like a pint of milk, those fine speeches. In fact, Cena's I'm WWE for life promos look fairly laughable nowadays. Sure, he's popped back in here or there and has a surely emotional retirement tour planned for 2025, but so has Dwayne Johnson. One might argue that Rock's latest toe-dipping exercise achieved more than Cena's last couple too. The great one was in fine fettle for his final boss run during WrestleMania 40 season, and that definitely did more for WWE than John's sporadic appearances. And that includes putting over Austin Theory at Mania 39. Remember that? Seeing Cena become what he once stood against must make his critics laugh, and it's probably vindicating for Rocky diehards. Have you enjoyed this 10 wrestlers who became everything they hated list? We'll go and have a look at this list looking at wrestlers who hated their big moments too. Trust me, you'll have a great time. Bye bye.